Once upon a time, in a great and prosperous kingdom, there lived a wise and just king. He was known far and wide for his wisdom, and many sought his counsel. However, no one knew the secret of his wisdom except for his most trusted servant. Every evening, this servant was given a covered dish to bring to the king, and he alone was allowed to serve it. The servant was curious about this mysterious dish, for it was never shared with anyone else. One day, unable to resist his curiosity, he carefully lifted the lid and found a white snake lying inside. Overcome with curiosity, he took a small bite of the snake. As soon as he swallowed it, he suddenly found himself able to understand the speech of animals. He heard the birds chirping outside and understood their words. He heard the buzzing bees and the rustling mice in the walls, all speaking to each other in their own languages. The accusation and the journey. Not long after, a precious ring belonging to the queen went missing. The king, furious, accused the servant of stealing it, as he was always around the royal chambers. The servant pleaded his innocence, but no one believed him. Desperate, he listened to the animals around him. He overheard a duck saying to another, "That foolish maid dropped a ring in my water, and I swallowed it while drinking." Hearing this, the servant rushed to the king and told him he could find the ring. He asked for a duck to be prepared for the king's meal. When the duck was cut open, the missing ring was found inside. The servant was proven innocent, and as a reward, the king allowed him to ask for anything he wished. The servant, who no longer wished to stay at court, asked only for a horse and some gold so that he might go out into the world and seek his fortune. Acts of kindness. As he traveled, his gift of understanding animals proved useful. One day, he saw a group of fish struggling on the shore after a fisherman had thrown them out. "Help us," they cried. Filled with pity, he picked them up and put them back in the water. "We will never forget your kindness," they said. Later, he came across a colony of ants whose anthill had been trampled by careless travelers. The ants cried out, "Please help us rebuild our home." The servant carefully restored their hill. "You will be repaid for your kindness," the ants assured him. Finally, he saw 3 baby ravens that had fallen from their nest and were too weak to fly. "We are starving," they called. He took out his last piece of bread and fed them. The ravens cawed, "You are kind-hearted. One day, we shall help you in return." The test for the princess. After much traveling, the servant reached a kingdom where a beautiful princess had set a challenge: anyone who wished to marry her must complete a difficult task, or else lose their life. Many had failed before him, but the servant was determined to try. The first task was to find a lost pearl necklace that had been scattered in the grass overnight. As the sun rose, the servant despaired, but then he heard tiny voices. The ants he had saved appeared and quickly gathered the pearls into a pile. The second task was to retrieve a golden key from the bottom of a deep lake. As he stood at the water's edge, the fish he had saved swam up. One of them carried the key in its mouth and placed it in his hand. The final challenge was the hardest. The princess gave him a small sack of grain and told him to find the rarest grain, the one that held the secret of everlasting life. The servant had no idea how to choose, but just then, the 3 ravens he had fed appeared. They brought him a small golden grain and said, "This is the one." When the servant presented the grain to the princess, she knew he was special. "You have passed all the tests," she said, "and shown kindness, wisdom, and courage." She fell in love with him, and they were married. Happily ever after. The servant, now a prince, ruled wisely alongside his bride. And though he no longer needed to understand the speech of animals, he never forgot the kindness of the creatures who had helped him on his journey. And so, they lived happily ever after.